Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. Evelyn Mitchell was 29 years old, but she carried the weight of several lives on her shoulders. Since her mother's death 6 months earlier, a huge void had opened up in her life. Her mother, her only close family, had been her pillar of support, her refuge from a past marked by years of instability and hardship. Evelyn had grown up in the working-class neighborhoods of Chicago, surrounded by noise, struggle, and shattered hopes. She had had to fight early on to keep herself from falling apart. Today, she worked as a waitress at a small, unassuming cafe in the South Loop, where she knew almost all the regulars. Every day, she tried to smile, to hide the inner fatigue, the weight of anxiety that followed her from the moment she woke up. Her salary was barely enough to pay the rent on her tiny studio apartment and repay the debts accumulated for her mother's medical bills. Yet, despite the difficulties, Evelyn held a fragile dream deep inside her, that of a better life, far from poverty, where she could finally breathe without fear. One cold, gray winter morning, while taking a break between shifts, Evelyn absent-mindedly flipped through the local newspaper she had borrowed from the cafe. The pages flew by without holding her attention until a singular advertisement suddenly caught her eye. The words were brief, almost mysterious. Seeking companion for terminally ill man. 1-month contract. Confidentiality required. High pay. She reread the sentence several times. The tone was formal, almost cold. Such an offer was completely out of the ordinary. Evelyn felt a strange curiosity mixed with a hint of hope. Perhaps this was an opportunity, an escape from her shadowy life. She had never imagined applying for this kind of job, but this time, something compelled her to dial the number provided. The phone rang several times before a calm, deep, and collected voice answered on the other end. "Hello, did you call about the ad regarding the accompaniment?" Evelyn felt her heart beat faster. Her voice trembled slightly, but she answered with determination. "Yes, that's me. I wanted to know what the criteria were." The voice answered with clinical precision, but without coldness. "We are looking for someone capable of providing discreet and respectful support to a terminally ill man. Confidentiality is absolute. The contract is for 1 month, renewable as needed. The salary is high, and the conditions will be detailed during a face-to-face interview." An appointment was set for the next day at the person's mansion in a wealthy part of town. Evelyn hung up, a mixture of apprehension and hope filling her. She knew her life was about to change, but for the first time in a long time, she felt like she might have a chance to change her destiny. A few days later, Evelyn stood before the large, solid oak doors of the Lancaster mansion, located in an affluent Chicago neighborhood. The contrast with her modest, everyday life was striking: manicured lawns, silver fountains, and a facade that exuded wealth and power. Her heart pounded, a mixture of nervousness and curiosity. She took a deep breath, then knocked. An elegant butler opened the door with a professional smile and led her through a long hallway adorned with antique paintings and period furniture. The atmosphere was heavy, almost solemn. Evelyn felt the weight of years and secrets in every corner. Finally, she was led into a large, light-filled living room where Victor Lancaster sat. The 65-year-old sat in a leather armchair, his hands clasped on one knee, his face gaunt from illness. His skin, once tanned and vibrant, was now pale and taut, as if pulled tight over his bald head. His piercing blue eyes shone with a cold, almost intimidating determination. Victor wasted no time. In a deep voice, without any detours, he declared, "Miss Mitchell, thank you for coming. I'm not going to lie to you or give you false hope. I'm a terminally ill man, and my time is running out. What I want is someone to keep me company. No pity, no needless tears. I want an honest, raw presence, without pretense. Someone who will listen to me, perhaps provoke me, but above all, not let me sink into despair." The tone was harsh, but carried within it an immense loneliness. Evelyn looked at him, aware that this man, despite his wealth and success, was deeply broken. She thought of her own life, her losses, the pain she knew well. Without hesitation, she answered, her voice soft but firm. "Mr. Lancaster, I have no promises to make, no illusions to offer. But I know what it's like to be alone, and I've learned to listen without judgment. I'll be there, without judgment or pity. A faint smile crossed Victor's face, a breath of humanity in his icy gaze. Very well, Miss Mitchell. Let's begin then. Evelyn knew she had just entered a world that would turn her upside down. She had nothing to lose, but everything to discover. The first few days at Lancaster Manor were almost palpably cold. Victor remained frozen in his isolation, his hard gaze avoiding any real contact. He spoke little, contenting himself with short answers, often tinged with bitter cynicism. Every gesture seemed measured, as if he were trying to protect a fragile part of himself. Evelyn quickly realized that his walls were stronger than those of the manor itself. She never allowed herself to impose her presence or force the conversation. Rather than speak, she chose to listen, patiently, silently, giving Victor time to open up or not. The hours passed, punctuated by heavy silences and fleeting glances. But little by little, like the slow thawing of a stubborn winter, a subtle transformation took place. One evening, as twilight cast an orange light over the walls, Victor, weakened by a painful day, broke the silence. His hoarse voice let out long-locked regrets. I sacrificed everything for success. My family, my friends. I isolated myself. Now I'm alone facing the end. Sometimes I wonder if it was worth it. Evelyn felt her heart sink. She approached, gently placing a hand on his. Sometimes we make mistakes, Victor, but it's never too late to seek peace. In turn, she dropped the masks. She spoke of her mother, taken too soon, of the pain that had left her alone, and of the daily struggle to simply move forward. She spoke of the days without light, the nights when the silence became deafening, and the fragile hope that refused to die. This sharing, at first timid, then deeper, created a bridge between their solitudes. Two wounded souls, from different horizons, but united in pain and the search for meaning. This fragile, still uncertain bond was nevertheless a promise that, perhaps, together, they would find a path to the light. One autumn evening, as the rain drummed gently against the large windows of the manor, Victor confided to Evelyn a truth he had long kept to himself. I refused experimental treatment, Evelyn. I knew it was my last chance, but I was convinced death was inevitable. What was the point of fighting it? The silence that followed was filled with sadness and resignation. Evelyn, touched by this confession, felt a new fire ignite within her. She could not bring herself to let this man give up so easily. Determined, she called on former colleagues from the hospital where she had worked briefly before becoming a waitress. Using these contacts, she managed to arrange a discreet consultation with a renowned specialist, Dr. Helen Montgomery, an expert in experimental oncology. Convincing Victor was a challenge. His cynicism and fatigue were insurmountable barriers. But, with gentleness and perseverance, Evelyn managed to make him see reason. During the consultation, the results of the latest tests revealed an unexpected reality. The disease was progressing, yes, but much more slowly than expected. There was still tangible hope, a window of opportunity. You're not doomed, Dr. Montgomery explained. With this treatment, you have a chance. But it will be difficult, and there will be risks. Victor remained silent, an inner storm visible in his tired eyes. Then he slowly nodded. This was the beginning of a new battle. The treatment began under the watchful eye of Evelyn, who became more than just a companion. She became his pillar of strength, his loyal friend, and sometimes even his conscience, reminding him of appointments and urging him to take care of himself when he felt like giving up. The days dragged on, punctuated by pain, nausea, and moments of extreme exhaustion, but also by small victories, a shared smile, a slightly longer walk, a more lively conversation. Victor, once cynical and resigned, found himself seeing a future where he could redeem his mistakes, repair what he had broken. He dreamed of peace, forgiveness, and light. And in that fight, Evelyn had become his light in the darkness, the steady hand that kept him going when everything seemed to be falling apart. 6 months had passed since the start of treatment, and although Victor Lancaster was far from cured, he was still here, alive, standing tall, with a renewed will that stood in stark contrast to the exhausted, resigned man Evelyn had encountered upon her arrival. Each day represented a victory against the disease, a battle won over the shadow that threatened to engulf him. Victor owed much of this renewed energy to Evelyn. More than just a companion, she had become his anchor, his confidant, and his breath of hope. She had awakened in him a desire to live, a strength that drove him to fight with a tenacity he no longer knew he possessed. One winter afternoon, as snow fell gently across the city of Chicago, Victor summoned Evelyn to his study, a warm but modest room in the mansion. He placed a thick, carefully prepared file in front of her. "Evelyn, you saved my life," he began, a rare emotion in his voice. "I want this second chance to be not just for me, but for others. I wish to leave a portion of my fortune to the creation of a support center dedicated to isolated patients, those forgotten by the system, those who suffer in silence." Evelyn felt her eyes moisten. This project was everything she had ever wanted, to offer refuge, a helping hand, hope to those who, like her and Victor, had known loneliness and despair. Victor continued, a slight smile on his tired lips. "I want you to lead this center. I know you're the right person to bring this vision to life." A few months later, the doors of the Lancaster Center for Hope opened in a disadvantaged neighborhood of Chicago, a place marked by poverty but full of potential. Evelyn took her role to heart, blending her personal experience with her newfound energy to build a welcoming, warm, and respectful refuge. She hired a dedicated team of doctors, psychologists, and volunteers, all driven by the same mission. The center quickly became a pillar of the community, helping hundreds of isolated, sick people, often abandoned by the traditional medical system. Families found support, and patients received dignified and compassionate care. Evelyn, through her commitment and compassion, became a respected figure. Her name circulated in the hospital corridors, at town meetings, and in neighborhood discussions. She had become a beacon of light, a symbol of hope. Victor, meanwhile, continued his fight against the disease, supported by the new family he had found. The disease hadn't disappeared, but fear and resignation had given way to an unsuspected strength. Their relationship had transcended the boundaries of money, illness, or duty. They had become two souls bound by a common struggle, two human beings who had saved each other in an often cruel world. One evening, in the garden of the manor, while the stars shone timidly, Victor looked at Evelyn with sincere tenderness. "You did more than accompany me. You gave me a reason to continue. And you showed me what hope really means," she replied, smiling. They knew the road would remain difficult, but together they were ready to face it. At an elegant evening honoring donors and partners of the Lancaster Center for Hope, the room was packed. Dim lighting enveloped attentive faces, while applause rang out with each presentation. Guests included physicians, community members, local dignitaries, as well as patients and their families, who came to witness the tangible impact of this initiative. Victor Lancaster, visibly weakened but dignified, took his place at the lectern. Silence fell instantly. His gaze swept the room, gently focusing on each person. Then, in a clear and moving voice, he addressed the audience. "I hired Evelyn Mitchell to accompany me in what I thought would be my last days. At the time, I was just looking for someone to listen to me, without pretense or pity. But I didn't know she would save my life." A pause fell, charged with emotion. "Even more, I didn't know that she would change the lives of so many others. Thanks to her, and to all of you here, this center has become a refuge, a light for those whom society often forgets." Evelyn, sitting in the front row, felt her heart sink. Her eyes shone with emotion as everyone turned their attention to her. Victor gazed at her with deep gratitude, a genuine smile illuminating his disease-scarred face. "In a world that sometimes forgets its most vulnerable, we have created a light. Together." The room erupted into rapturous applause, some guests discreetly wiping away a tear. Evelyn slowly stood up and joined Victor on stage. Their handshake was firm, imbued with a bond born of the struggle they had fought side by side. This moment symbolized much more than a professional success. It was the victory of a rediscovered humanity, of a solidarity woven from pain and hope. After the ceremony, as the guests dispersed, Evelyn and Victor stood alone for a moment in the lantern-lit garden. The coolness of the night contrasted with the warmth of their connection. "You know," Victor murmured, "I thought my days were numbered, but with you by my side, I discovered that every moment really does count." Evelyn replied with a smile. and I never imagined that this job would change my life so much." They looked at each other for a long time, two souls united by an improbable journey, ready to continue this fight together, whatever the trials to come.